remember the sobbing. Just I was broken. The betrayal, the heaviness, the defeat that I felt in that moment, and that's when I really prayed and said, well, what am I supposed to do with all this? Like, I knew my job was done. I was placed under investigation by the College of Nurses. I had lost respect in the community. My character was destroyed. I'd lost family, friends, as many of us did. Mine just so happened to be on a public display. Yeah, you got to get up. Otherwise, it'll all be for nothing. So keep going. And so that's when I learned about Ephesians 6:10, put on the armor. And in that moment, I did. I put on the armor of God.
It's not going to change for women in the Christian community who are in leadership if we're not talking about these things. So this podcast is speaking true, vulnerable experiences where women really tried their best to show up well, even when they failed. And how do we extend grace in failures and mistakes, knowing that to be a leader and to be a woman in leadership is one of the hardest things, especially in the Christian community. This podcast is for women who are pastors, CEOs, ministry leaders, founders, and women serving within the fivefold who carry vision publicly and wrestle privately. As you listen, you will gain courage to confront your own story without shame, wisdom to strengthen your leadership, and clarity to rebuild with discernment, boundaries, and grace. You will not just hear testimony, you will receive language for your process, tools for healthier leadership, and the confidence to lead again without losing your soul. This is the Sword Grace Unscripted podcast. Welcome, everybody, to Sword Grace Unscripted. I am so excited that you are joining me, and I am so excited about having our guest, Kristen Nagle, on our episode. So before I get started, Sword and Grace is about being unscripted. I don't always know where these conversations are going to go, but what we want is for you to be heard as a woman who is leading. We want you to hear stories like Kristen, who has battled hard things, and she has continued to rise, and even during seasons of new things that she has to face. And this is the real stories of women, all of the stuff that happens behind the scenes. Kristen is the founder of Reclaiming Birth Conference. She is a former neonatal intensive care unit nurse. She turned faith-led movement. Kristen has spent over a decade walking out a return to God's design through home birth, homeschooling, health, sovereignty, and building a life outside of conventional systems. Her work centers on helping women move from fear and outsourcing trust, embodiment rooted in leadership in their homes. Through birth, faith, and lived experience, Kristen invites families to remember what it was always theirs to reclaim, that life was meant to be lived with faith in God as the anchor. Kristen, I absolutely love your bio. When I read it, like before I had you on, I was just like, okay, how am I going to do this and not cry? So I just want to thank you for being on this episode of Sword and Grace Unscripted. I'm so glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor.
I know people are going to hear your story of being a nurse and working in such, a substantial area of the hospital system. Do you want to share how that started and where you are today in that area?
Yeah, it's really interesting. The more I've kind of reflected over the last few years of how I even ended up in nursing. When I was younger, I was always immersed in nature. Like I thought I wanted to go into environmental sciences. I wanted to go on explorations, learn about nature and do all these studies and just be outside. But I was told there's not enough jobs, not enough money, just not a good path to go into. Go into nursing. You can travel, you can help people, and you'll always have a job. And I was like, okay, that sounds good. So that is actually how I ended up in nursing. I found past journals for my first year, and it was, did I make the biggest mistake of my life? So It's just kind of interesting because we're going to get into these conversations of leadership and trusting, your voice and doing things for you versus what you're told. But that's how I ended up in nursing. I loved it. I loved connecting with the families. I loved connecting with the babies, the relationship I was forming with them. And but I was a very indoctrinated nurse. I believed in the medical system. I believed in injections for our children. I believed in everything I was told, to the point where I feared birth, thought it was dangerous, and that home birth should be illegal. And it's really interesting because this will come out too, is at this point I also did not know God. So I was not aware and did not have him in my life during this time too, but I was blessed to work with some coworkers that that took every opportunity in their own ways to minister to me. So you just never know where you're going to find people that you can plant the seed for
That is
others.
so true. Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's important for as you share your story too, is that it is interesting when we come to know the Lord, there's a new revelation that comes about who he is, right? Like, and how he's designed us. And you come from that to being a Christian and understanding how God has designed and created the earth and in our bodies. And so do you want to share a little bit what that looked like now? So now you're a Christian and you're walking under probably a new revelation.
Yeah, and it didn't come all at once. It was definitely layers of learning. And my first son was born in 2015, and that was kind of my first, I guess, door, my entry point of walking through this unlearning. And it kept being pressed upon me, and now I look at it as like God's intervention, his voice, and connecting with the right people at the time to look into food. It started with food. What was I going to feed my baby? What was going to be his first foods? And at first I pushed it aside. I'm a nurse. I studied this in school. Of course, I know what I'm going to feed my baby. But it kept being pressed on me. No, look into it. And I did, with new baby sleeping in my arms. I watched one documentary and was hooked. Another documentary. And I ended up going to school to become a holistic nutritionist. I just became fascinated with food. So I went to the school, Canadian School of Natural Nutrition, became a holistic nutritionist. And again, that's when all the light bulb moments started to go off for me about, we did learn about spirituality and life, and not from a Christian perspective, but again, it started to kind of plant some seeds, as well as just honoring the body and seeing the body in a different way, instead of just like a petri dish or just this physical body, that there was more to us that, was not recognized in hospital settings. When my second son was born in 2018, it was trusting his design, how perfect, we already are, how we were created. And I remember watching him grow. And this was when I said no to all injections, and watching him grow and just being like, you are just so perfect. Like, you're perfect just the way you are. What a lie we've been told as parents, that we need something man-made for these beautiful babies to thrive. And it's interesting because through my first son, my second son, the different lessons, learning about their body started to build this trust that there's something greater than us, that there's something bigger than us. So that more of like coming into the bigger design of a creator was starting to really come back into focus for me.
Oh, wow. Okay. So as you're now walking into this new revelation about our created design, what did that start to look like? So here you're still a nurse, right? You're still walking this out. And when did it all shift for you? When did you start to see like this newfound revelation that you've been walking out? As you said, you were unlearning. Where did that bring you to in your nursing career?
Yeah. It's interesting, that unlearning, and your eyes, like the veil, I say the veil's lifted, and you start to see things totally different. And once you see, you can't unsee. And I just remember being like, hey, what are we a part of here? What actually is, going on? I would say, because I think it's important for listeners, like when I was going through the spirituality aspect and knowing that, there is something bigger than us, I would speak to source, to universe. It was very new age in my learning and my experience in what I was doing, and learning in those circumstances. But it was towards 2020 is when it all kind of started to come together. So I'm learning about food. I'm realizing the importance of nourishing our bodies. I'm watching my second son just thrive and just how beautiful like he's growing without needing anything from, man. I'm watching in the neonatal intensive care unit. I'm watching our babies who are 23-week old, like microprems, and
Yes.
at 60 days of life, they're getting their first shots. And so they're thriving, they're getting bigger, they're getting close to going home, and they get their 60-day shots, and then they go backwards in needing invasive breathing support. Their heart stops beating, they're having trouble breathing. Again, they need like mechanical ventilation, and we're passing this off as like a normal side effect. This is just normal.
Right.
We would share this at the bedside with another nurse at shift change, be like, oh, baby so and so is just having a lot of spells today because they had their shots. Like just totally nonchalant that it was no big deal. And I remember thinking, watching my son and everything I was learning, I mean, like, I don't think this is right. Like, what do you think it's caused from this? Do you think we should look into this and start asking questions? And then I, was then, that crazy nurse, the crazy one who was trying to turn, nothing into something. It was 2020 came, and we know what that happened then. Everything shut down, the world changed. But I started to really see things differently. And I don't know if many others, rabbit holes, whatever you want to call them, like I just continued to open one door after another. And I just met the complete darkness, which was evil. And I remember at that point, one, I was living in so much fear of the world, scared they were going to come take my children, scared of how we were living differently, scared something might happen. I was consuming information because I thought the more I learned, the more I could be aware. But the more I learned, the more fear I was creating within myself. It was this awful perpetual cycle. And so two things kind of happened in that moment. One, when I saw the evil for what it was, I thought there's a duality to everything in life. And if this is so evil that, this is the devil, there has to be one opposite. So all this new age thing I'm doing, all of the meditations, the affirmations, everything I'm doing is not strong enough to defeat this one evil. And so I was like, there must be one source that is greater than this, because there's only like one opposite to each. And I was working with my friend who would always little slips, but she knew it would make me really angry if anything ever brought up Jesus or faith. I grew up in a Catholic school, and so the thought of any kind of religion, Jesus, God, just would actually create some like visceral anger within me. So she was very cautious of how she presented it to me.
Yeah.
But I came to her at this point because I said to her, you know everything that I know in the world, but you're not afraid. I don't want to be afraid anymore. So what are you doing?
Yeah.
And this is when she poured her heart out to me and was able to share the gospel, and I was finally open to receive it. And that was the changing point for everything in 2020. And then taking the lessons of my children, taking this, and then it finally just kind of all started to make sense to me.
I just want to say, I get the privilege of knowing your story, and I'm inviting you to share your story. But even to hear that I didn't even know this part, that your faith, what we know of what's happened in 2020, and to walk through that as a nurse, that I think what's so powerful that you said, and just even I'm like envisioning this, is that as you said, there's always something opposite, right? So if you see the demonic part, like if there's, and you're practicing New Age, there's always got to be something opposite to that. And then you aligned with fear, because this is what we know New Age can't. It can't give you peace beyond all understanding. It can't give you joy. And as you're walking this out, to recognize there's got to be something that gives me peace. And as you're watching another person who knows the Lord, who knows Jesus, to know that the fear must be so overwhelming as you're walking this out. And you're in a position that, some people would say, as a nurse, it is a leadership position. You have authority to some extent as a nurse, and watching the world literally explode across the planet. And fear is a predominant emotion that, I mean, in general, people experience, but fear is a predominant emotion during those years. And a lot of people were struggling and very scared. So to have recognized that and then to also add on top of that in the field that you're working. So, okay, so now you're like walking this revelation, you're recognizing, I don't want this fear. How did that start to have an impact on you as a nurse during those years?
I was not able to stay silent, for one, with what I was seeing, you know, the what the media was portraying, what was actually happening behind the scenes, the lies that I was witnessing. I tried for a little bit to, you know, kind of stay by myself in the back corner, do what I needed to do. I was not living my life in fear outside of the workplace. So, you know, I was not participating in the public health mandates that were placed on us. You know, we were together with family, with friends, with people, you know, I was breathing normally. And my colleagues did not like that. They became fearful of me for what I might be bringing into the hospital. And so lots of reports were made about me to management. I ended up getting suspended twice, which led to being indefinitely suspended. And I couldn't play along with the lies anymore, and especially having this new kind of revelation of, you know, of faith, of, you know, who wins really in this. And I think, you know, God was working through me where he used my voice. And I ended up hosting a freedom rally in my hometown. And I just felt I needed to do something. I couldn't just be a keyboard warrior anymore. I needed to feel like I was making an impact, like sharing as a nurse what I was seeing, get the truth out. And so I held a freedom rally in my hometown, and it was the most beautiful thing to see the people coming together. And you could see that there was like this inspiration of people like, okay, we're not alone. We're not crazy. Okay, there's something out here. And I remember being on such a high from that with my friend that we did this. We're like, look what we were able to do. And it's interesting how that happens, right, in life. And now I've been able to recognize the pattern when you do have this high, that the devil wants to knock you off of that as quickly as possible. And he doesn't want you to stay up there. And so now I've recognized this. It's our job to make sure that he doesn't knock us off. But at this time, I was still new. And the next morning, I woke up to headlines all over the news about me, about being, you know, LHSC, NICU nurse, reckless, all the things. And then watching my community, local hometown, my local community just rip me apart in comments, colleagues, businesses, places I had supported. And I didn't know, and then reading all the testimonials of people that wrote in about me and reported me, and one from a very close family member that did not want to hide their name, wanted me to see it. And I just remember exactly where I was when I just collapsed under the weight of all of it. I remember the sobbing, I was broken. The betrayal, the heaviness, the defeat that I felt in that moment. And that's when I really prayed and said, well, what am I supposed to do with all this? I lost everything. I knew my job was done. I was placed under investigation by the College of Nurses. I had lost respect in the community. My character was destroyed, reputation. I had lost family, friends, as many of us did. Mine just so happened to be on a public display. He met me on the floor, as he does with many of us, and was, get up. Yeah, you got to get up. Otherwise, it'll all be for nothing. So keep going. And so that's when I learned about Ephesians 6:10, put on the armor. And in that moment, I put on the armor of God. I learned, you know, that scripture. I had a piece of jewelry made for me that I wore for 3 years straight to keep close to my heart. And he did. He put me back together and he said, keep going. And that's what I did. And I leaned on his strength for the years to come. Everyone's like, you're so brave. How did you do it? And I said, not by me. It was not by me.
Yeah. Oh, Kristen, I mean, I think the recognition is like there's so many themes in what you just shared. Like you used words like rejection, betrayal, people that hurt you probably that you didn't expect that would hurt. And I think what everybody needs to hear is your heart was not to cause harm. This wasn't an intent to cause harm. This was an intent to actually do the opposite. Is that you had a revelation in terms of what you believed needed to happen, and you need to speak out to it. And of course, as we can look back in hindsight, there's a lot of painful things that people walk through. And this, of course, isn't a place where we're creating opinions, but I want people to hear that you have a story that at the place in your life where all was overwhelmed, lost everything, felt like, what is going on, God? On your knees, he met you exactly right there. And I think the theme for most women is no matter what you've gone through, that's where the power is in our moments where we're on the floor and we can't do anything else. It's like God, the Lord comes in, and here he is right there with you, which your statement, it's time to get back up. Kristen, that is what I want every woman to hear, that based on everything you've gone through, you still held that revelation that God gave you around what does it look like to reclaim our health. And as hard as it was, the betrayals, the rejections, the discredit of your reputation, and that voice of the Lord that said, get back up. That is so powerful. Okay, so Kristen, what does that look like when you're like, okay, Lord, I have everything coming against me. Like, it's in the public. People know your face. And here's the Lord who met you exactly in that place and said, okay, Kristen, you got to get back up. I have given you something to carry, and you got to get back up. So what did that look like for you in getting back up?
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about this too, is when do we pray and wait versus when do we take action? Like, when is it, the flesh, where we're trying to do it all in the flesh versus do it with God? So this has been, I think all of us, maybe it's an ongoing struggle of like, what is obedience versus coming from the flesh? But I knew in that moment it was get up and you have work to do. And so I went to work and I made phone calls and I connected with people that I knew were doing the same. And we formed, organization. We came together, we stood together, and we continued to act and reach out to communities where it was needed. We traveled, but we took actual steps. And I think it's different for everyone, but I know in that case, that was really important to actually move and do, not just, it wasn't just pray and wait and, he's going to take care of everything. It was like, okay, no, I've given you a task and now you have to continue to walk forward and I'm going to be with you, but you have to do it. I've been reading a lot the last little bit for whatever reason. I've read it twice now. I'll probably go back to it again, like just twice as in recently, but Nehemiah. And I think of him often lately, just, it's like, he didn't pray for things to be easier. He prayed for stronger hands. He went into a task and he never wavered. He was like, no, we're going to complete it. When things, went backwards, he's like, okay, then we're just going to pivot, make a new plan, but we're going to complete it. But he had to move, he had to act, he had to actually physically do something. And I guess, so what did that look like for me when he said get up? It meant move, speak, use your voice, use your platform, use your skills, get out there and meet people where they're at, actually go and have conversations and connect. You are going to be this voice, this pillar for this moment in time, and I will use you to make these, conversations and to help people.
Well, and I think it's really powerful that you identified that. It's like the get up and move, because I think you're right. In the Christian community, sometimes we can get paralyzed, right? We can be like, okay, God, what does obedience look like? Or we can be in this place where I'm praying and I'm praying and I'm praying and I'm waiting for confirmation and I'm waiting for God to show up and say, what is my move? But Kristen, the fact that you said, no, I have to do something, I have to get up and move, because there is a partnership. And we have to think about the scripture where it says works and faith actually, they come together. It's important to have faith, but we also have to do something. There's a doing action in our faith. And recognizing that you needed to do something and starting phone calls and building is a part of the doing, because when you get a revelation, and yes, you might have many voices, and just like Nehemiah, which is, I mean, to read Nehemiah is profound, because he came up came up against a lot of voices who discouraged, they slandered, they discredited him, but he still kept building and building. And when you have that revelation, no matter what the voices say, you got to get up and you got to keep going. And that's a part of your story. Um, so is this a part of what has led to today? Is this where the Reclaiming Birth conference and all of the things around reclaiming birth has come out of?
Yeah, it's all connected. So, because I was a neonatal intensive care nurse, and I had mentioned at the beginning, I feared birth. I saw the worst of the worst, and that's what I thought birth was. I thought it was dangerous, and I thought home birth should be illegal. But through the unlearning, I say each child gave me a different lens, a different learning. My first taught me about the physical body, how to nourish the body, not just through food, but thoughts and everything else that we're doing. My second son was really trusting, how we're created, and now bringing in the faith aspect to it. And now I can see like how, like divinely designed we are by God, trusting that there's no mistakes, right? I think this is interesting when I look in the hospital. This baby comes out, and the first thing we do is put them on a table and inject them, as if saying, God made a mistake, man knows better. Like, oh, this baby's flawed. God doesn't make mistakes, but humans do. And so my second son was that really trusting, like you're not flawed. And then there came a point after 2022 where I no longer wanted to fight for freedom. I just thought this isn't conducive to where I want to be. I want to create freedom in my life, but also knowing I really had stepped into, but I wanted to honor that I already was free. The Lord met me in that place on the floor. He broke all my chains. He took away everything that didn't matter. And so what am I fighting for when he already freed me? And so after 2022, I was like, I need to walk in that and actually stand in that and help others do the same. Like, we don't need to fight when we're already freed. We've already been given the gift.
Wow.
And then baby girl was, I became pregnant after that, 2023. And this was everything coming full circle. Trusting our physical body, trusting how God designed us, now coming into my new strengthening faith, and really just trusting. And so this pregnancy had no tests, I didn't have typical prenatal care, and I just fully trusted in what was being created within me. I leaned on a scripture a lot from Psalms. I believe it's Psalm 139:13. We are fearfully and wonderfully made, and we are knit together in the secret place in the womb. But I kept leaning on the secret place. Like, how powerful is that? It is supposed to be secret. Like, it is only for God's formation, his eyes, no one else. And so I leaned. It was my most peaceful, powerful pregnancy that I had, because it was mine and his. And baby girl was born at home, and with all faith that she would be, surrendering it all. And it was the most amazing, intense, challenging, painful, but amazing experience I'd ever had. And I just thought every woman needs to know what their body is capable of, and to know that God will meet them in there, and this gift, and how we're created, and how life is meant to come into this world. And so that is how Reclaiming Birth came into, also birthed, was wanting to impact this new awareness and revelation onto as many women and families as possible. I am going to share quick before diving into all that, because I think it's important to be honest and transparent. After the birth, I was a little bit angry at God. I thought he kind of let me down.
Thank you for being, because this whole point of these conversations is to be real, Kristen, because that is so true for a lot of women. It's that there is, and if we don't admit that as leaders in any role that we play, that there's these seasons you go out of hard things, and you can be so angry at God and say, what is going on, right? Whatever that anger wants to express. Can you tell all of us, what did that look like with God?
Yes. Well, I had done so much work, like throughout the years, trusting our body, all this coming into faith and this understanding and everything I had walked and gone through. And I was just, learning so much about birth and I was feeling so empowered and in my body. And I was like, okay, he's going to meet me there. And I had this idea of this blissful, kind of pain free birth that I was going to, bring life into this world. And it was not any of those things. It was raw. It was intense. I thought I wanted a photographer there. I did not call her. Definitely did not want anyone in there taking pictures. It was, not, in the moment I didn't feel this way. I didn't feel beautiful. I didn't feel like any of those things. And the pain was all in my back with no, it did not let up. It was just intense the entire time. And so my husband, bless his heart, was on my back the entire time, counter pressure. And that was a gift in itself for him to be there and support me and witness birth and be a part of it. It was the both of us together. And I was angry because I thought, where were you, God? I had prayed, I'd done this. I thought I had done the mental work. I thought I had done all these things. And then I thought, well, where did I go wrong? Did I fail? Did I not have enough faith? Did I do something wrong? So there was a point where I felt either I had failed or he had let me down. But then there was revelation that came from that too, which was interesting, because I realized that, footprints in the sand, I always come back to that, is that is that no, he was with me through all of it, and I started saying we birth how we live and we live how we birth, and I needed to feel the fullness of my body. Like I needed to feel it. I needed to feel the intensity. I needed to feel everything basically I had gone through, but to know that I was capable to get through it. And so he was with me in that moment to show me, like, it's funny, I'm super emotional, to show me that how capable our bodies are, and that he was never going to let me down, and that he carried me through that moment for me to meet baby girl in that. So the pain, the intensity was all for its own purpose, and that to show that yes, it was intense, but yes, you can get through it. Just like everything else, when life is intense, you will get through it, and then I will meet you on the other end. Because as soon as baby girl arrived, well, it's all gone. It's just euphoric and
Yeah.
amazing, and just like, oh my gosh. The first thing I said to her was, we did it. And the power of
Oh,
these words, he was there. Like we did it. The power in those three words, it makes me emotional to think about every time. And that's what I wanted to bring to every woman, and why reclaiming birth.
oh, Kristen, and just those words that you said, I keep replaying them over in my head. We birth where we live and we live where we birth. That metaphor, just for every woman to hear that, because some of our greatest testimonies and the greatest areas that we build are from those places of walking through our greatest hardships, and we birth something because we've lived through it. And out of that, you have been birthing a home ministry from that experience of walking through hardship, walking through revelation of health, and reclaiming what it looks like through the lens of how God has designed us. And today to like have walked through something hard, and to also own, I think, I'm so thankful that you actually named that there is a time in a season where you were angry at God, but then waking up to that revelation to say, no, God was with me. And I love that footprints poem. I think we forget that sometimes when we're in the hardship, and you're like, it just feels beyond anything, like the pain, the sorrow, the grief, that all that comes up. And to continue to recognize that, like even that statement you said, like, we did it. That that's powerful, Kristen. That is so powerful. So I want to touch upon just something, because I know that in that, and maybe because it's a little bit of our conversation before we started this episode, like there's been so many incredible things that you have shared with our listeners, and all that you've walked through and what you're building. But I know it hasn't always been easy behind the scenes. I know that as you're walking through hardship, you get revelation, walk through hardship, get revelation, which is what we all experience. But what do you think as a woman? So as you've been leading and building and walking through this revelation, where do you notice or name that you're struggling, that these things still show up for you? And maybe naming that for women so that we can empower women to hear your story, that you're still walking through hard things. You're still recognizing I have to name some of these things for me.
Yeah. It's interesting because everyone say, you're so brave for doing what you did or this, and that
No.
seemed like the easy part. But my whole life, I always wanted to fit in. I just wanted to be accepted. That's what I was taught, right? Life is
Yeah.
easier when you are accepted, when you follow the crowd. It's just life is easier. Wanting to be a part of, the cool kid group in school, whatever that looked like. Like I just was
Yes.
not.
Yep.
But that's what I wanted to be a part of. I was a shapeshifter. I just tried to mold myself and fit in where, I thought I could. And it's interesting because having gone through what I did in those, earlier years in 2020, I was faced with immense rejection, had everything taken from me, my character reputation. So you would think that I was no stranger to facing rejection and overcoming that.
Yeah.
Through that, I've noticed in the everyday moments, and it's come up, after this, like post this, still wanting to fit in, still wanting to be accepted. And so something happened where I had co-organized an event 2 years ago, and me and the friend that was organizing it, we kind of bent to the facilitators that were there, that we kind of looked up to them. We're like so grateful they were going to be a part of it, and they had very strong opinions to how things should run that were opposite to ours. But we shrank our opinions and went with what they thought was best. And it's interesting because when you do that, you do a disservice for everyone. Because then at the event, we had our breastfeeding babies there, I had my children, and it was received pretty poorly by some, not all, but some, very strong reactions to it. Whereas had we stayed firm into who we are and our convictions, what we wanted, that would have been, expectation would have been set from the beginning, and all the confusion and the wounding and everything would have been avoided. So when you're not true to yourself, you don't only hurt yourself, you kind of hurt those around you because of the confusion and the misalignment. And this was a lesson in that whole event. I thought there was a whole other lesson in that, but I found myself recently apologizing again. And luckily I had a friend who called me out on it. Kristen, why do you always feel the need to apologize for how you feel? And I went right back to that because after that event, I apologized for having my children there. I'm kind of like trying to put it all together, but basically I found myself apologizing again to appease other people's discomfort, to appease the relationship, to fit in, get rid of that discomfort or the tension. I wanted to fix it, and I thought by apologizing, forgive others as we would like to be forgiven, I thought I was doing something greater, but I actually wasn't. I was doing a disservice to me, and I was doing a disservice to them by, thinking I was actually being the better person by forgiving, but I wasn't forgiving. I was hiding and shrinking back and creating like a self-erasure, a self-betrayal. And so that lesson has been huge, that still comes up for me, even though I walk through all this rejection, that I still want to stand in, and appease and make things smooth. And so I really, this past couple months, had to stand firm in who I am, where I'm going. Not everyone is in alignment. Not everyone's going to get it. And it's not about, not forgiving, it's loving everyone, but knowing that we're not always meant to be on the same path. And I've had to really get clear on that the last couple months. It's been a really big, prominent lesson for me.
Oh, Kristen, I think the fact of just sharing that, because the conviction, I mean, you said a few things that I want everybody to hear, is that alignment is so powerful. We have to recognize there is some people we're supposed to be aligned with, and there's others we're not. And a couple other things as you were able to identify was when you have a conviction for something, that you don't change it because others don't align with that. Because when you don't stay strong in your conviction, it's messy for everybody. Then there isn't clarity and transparency at the onset of anything, because now you get these opinions that are in opposition. And again, I think the hardest thing for women, for all of us, is it is hard to be rejected. It's hard when people may not be in agreement with us, and we do get into that place where we want to make everybody happy. We want to perform and we want to please, and so then we start to go and try and fix that through apologies, and we give up parts of who we are, and we give up how we think we need to lead. What I love that you said in that is, because I know, my goodness, this is a significant area for most women, is the need to ensure that everybody's happy. To please everybody, and you lose yourself in that. And when God gives you a vision and there is a strong revelation of what you're called to do, then you've got to find the right alignments. I feel that strongly for a lot of women today as they're building ministries and they're building what God has asked. I think people are getting tossed about because they're not sure who their alignments are. If you were to leave women with like something really powerful from your story, if you could take women who are exactly where you are with struggling with, what would you tell them with everything you've learned?
We have a God of the possible, right? There's nothing impossible for God. And I'll share a testimony, and one that I walked, because sometimes when we're building missions, when we're building things on, like, with purpose, when it's placed on our heart, sometimes there's financial lack, right? That's something very real. And sometimes when the financial lack comes up, we can get in places of desperation. We can get in places of fear. We can get in places of trying to align, to fix those gaps of, the lack. And so this was another place I found myself in. And there was a big sponsor that was going to come into the event. And it just was not congruent or coherent with the movement we were creating, with Reclaiming Birth Conference, what that looked like. And I had to say no to it, and it dissolved a relationship, it dissolved a partnership. It was really unfortunate, but I just knew I couldn't. You can't accept money that goes against God. It just puts you in a whole other agreement with something that you don't want to partner with. And so I said no, and within hours 2 more came in that over surpassed the one I said no to.
Oh, wow. Kristen, and that speaks to obedience, aligning with God first. When God gives you this vision, to stay with his vision, the alignments will come, and there's favor in that, in God's in obedience to him. So what a powerful testimony. There might be women who might want to reach out to you. So if women have questions, if they want to reach out to see what opportunities, is there a way that people can reach out to you? And I will post all of this for them to grab as well.
Yeah, I guess I have a couple different spots. My most active on Instagram still, it's Kristen_Nagle.
Okay.
But the work,
Okay.
the mission, the ministry is through reclaimingbirthconference.com. And this is the real work that we want to impact more families. We want the women in the room. Last year we invited the men to come in because, they're part of creating life and bringing life into this world. And so we really want to see more families in the room to really embody that in childbirth, because it sets the stage for how we reclaim our family moving forward. So reach out to reclaimingbirthconference.com. We're always looking for ways to help get the word out, fill the room. We want to double the room this year. We're always looking for aligned partnerships and sponsors to come in. It allows us to bring in speakers from all over and just continue to build on this mission. I have big goals of what we're creating and the impact that I hope to have for families around the globe.
I will post all of the ways you can connect with Kristen, and I encourage everybody to check out the incredible things that she is doing.